Hi, Abril.
Hi Zaid, hi. Hi everybody.
Hi,
Hi,
Hi and
Hi, bro.
hi, everybody.
hi. Hi Geordie.
so colleagues, if you don't mind me starting, and then we can move forward. So thank you, colleagues, for joining us today. For those who might not know me, I'm Zaid Minty from Creative City South. Thank you to Wits Cultural Policy and Management Department and Sibikwa for hosting this talk. Thank you to the City of Rome and the United Cities and Local Governments Committee on Culture for supporting the talk. And thanks to Francois Matarasso for drafting the document and agreeing to present it to us. We are very honored to have all your presence. Today we are going to be speaking about the 2020 Rome Charter, a vital and inspiring document which speaks to the right of all people to participate in the cultural life of their places. This is a fundamental human right enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948, a document which is even more important today in our complex times. My role here today is to introduce the two sessions and hand you over to the two facilitator speakers who will introduce you to their panel and manage their sections. The speaker bios are noted in the chat box again for more details, and to save time, we will only give you a shortened affiliation in the sessions. Please can I ask the audience to introduce themselves in the chat box, including their affiliations. Please remember to mute yourself unless you are speaking, and if you're not part of the panels, to take yourself off the video for now. As a word of introduction before I hand over, I want to applaud the City of Rome for taking this initiative to develop this very important document, which is set up to serve both as a guide for its own cultural policy development, but also as a platform for global dialogue. Importantly, the document makes a key contribution in our debates on the role of culture in human rights, development, citizenship, and democracy. These issues have often been marked in discourses of policy implementation, where narrower economic or nationalistic agendas tend to dominate. I hope I'm still okay here. Our objective today is for a South African audience to develop an understanding of the 2020 Rome Charter and ask what resonances this document may have for policy and practice in South Africa. In other words, it's an opportunity to listen, learn, question, and dialogue. We do not expect that we will shape a new cultural policy from this dialogue, but rather that the exchange will help inform our work, question assumptions, and to use the knowledge to gain to enrich our practice. So without further ado, I want to hand over to Carla Schiavone, who is the Senior Advisor to the Vice Mayor responsible for cultural development, who is responsible to a large extent for guiding the charter process, who will introduce you to her panel and speak about the work that they've done to date. Thank you, Carla.
Thank you, Zaid, and hello, everybody. I'm really happy to be here with you all, and it's an honor to be discussing let's say, the effort that we have been doing in the past months together with you, knowing that it has inspired and it can inspire dialogue. So thank you, Zaid, for creating this. Thank you, everyone. I bring the greetings from the Vice Mayor Luca Bergamo. Unfortunately, he cannot be with us due to very tight agenda in this period. So he apologizes, but I hope that, I am sure that he wanted to be with us today because he's very interested into discussing with everyone what are the implications and what are the questions that the Charter brings. So before starting, if you are, I would like to share with you a 60-second video. What do you think, Zaid? Do you think we can do that? Super. So it's a video that shares very quickly, let's say, the charter, the process, and how can I call it? let's say, the mood behind the decision to create and to give birth to the charter. So let me share it with you. Hopefully technology will help.
What is culture for? Have you ever thought about that? It's everything we do beyond mere survival. It gives meaning to our perceptions. It brings humanity together through emotions, imagination, thoughts. A group of over 20 cities has started an online initiative to advance the right to take part in cultural life as an essential condition for a better society. We're launching a global proposal to promote everyone's right to discover, enjoy, create, share, protect, and participate in culture. It lies at the root of all our connections and in our common future on this planet. Sharing a rich cultural life together empowers us to face challenges and crises and is vital for the rebirth of our cities and communities.
So this was like a very, very short and hopefully, thank you all, clear, let's say, video that puts together what we saw happening, because we facilitated it, but it actually happened thanks to the contribution of many cities, many experts, that from March onwards, actually, it was meant to be a physical effort, the writing of the charter, but it transformed itself into, let's say, a baby of the COVID-19 experience. And it actually was an occasion to reflect together even further regarding what culture can mean to our societies. So we started Rome and United Cities and local governments, the cultural committee. We started discussing about this. It was more or less like 1 year ago. And then when we wanted to start discussing together physically in Rome, gathering everybody in Rome, then the pandemic exploded and we had to reshape the whole effort. And it all took a completely different and new meaning to us all. Even if, it made it more clear what we wanted to say. And on this, I will ask Francois and Jordi, who have been working, I will introduce them later, to tell you more about this. I think that we will use like the first 20 minutes to share with you what is the charter about, what were our intentions, and what are the reflections that we are collecting while we are discussing the charter with many more cities, many groups, many experts like you from all over the world. So, and then we are really happy to be part of the dialogue and the conversation you find it relevant for this community of people gathered here. So, first of all, let me introduce you to my friend, our friend, that I understand you might know, Jordi Pasquale, the coordinator of the Cultural Committee of United Cities and Local Governments. With Jordi, we started this endeavor with a lot of willingness to create something relevant for the discussion, even if we know that in terms of cultural rights and cultural policies, a lot has been written. So the idea was to make sure that this document was not another document. And then let me introduce you to Francois Matarazzo, an independent researcher that is let's say, the writer, if I can say, the one that has put together ideas and words and trying to be like the collector of the charter. while discussing in many meetings that you can imagine we went through with a lot of discussion. Jordi, I believe it would be nice if you can share a little bit more about the Charter and the reason why this initiative has been accepted from Rome to a global organization like yours.
Yes, grazie Carla. Thank you very much, Carla. And thank you very much, Zaid, for this outstanding opportunity to share what we have been doing with this group of people, very prestigious. I'm really impressed by all the people that are participating in this seminar. Thank you, very sincere. Thank you to you, Zaid. United Cities and Local Governments is a small organization, though growing, and especially growing in relevance. We are the World Organization of Cities and Local Governments, with sections in all continents, including a section in Africa, UCLG Africa, and with several committees, thematic committees. One of these committees is ours, the Committee on Culture. We do two things. We try to invite our cities to exchange information, knowledge, if possible, among them. And we also like to set standards, to give advice according to the challenges that in history we face in the relation on people, development, and culture. And so this is why in 2004, now 16 years ago, we published the Agenda 21 for Culture. In 2015, we published a toolkit, Culture 21 Actions, with 100 actions. And we support, actively advocate for this relation, development, people, and culture as present as possible in the UN agreements and agendas. We have not been very successful, let me put it this way, because conditions do not yet exist in the UN to place culture as an explicit operational dimension of development. I'm sure, I'm convinced you all are familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, and I'm also sure that you have analyzed the ways with which cultural actors and more generally people that need culture to widen freedoms, to have capacity to choose. Well, it is not yet there, not explicitly, not as explicitly as it should be, not as operationally as it should be. But we carry on. This is something that in the past, when we analyze critically the way global agendas are built, this is always the result of some tension, and very often civil society and cities and local governments are at the avant-garde, make proposals that at a later stage are accepted, adopted, adapted by nations and later by the international community. So we are happy to have this pioneer role, to explicitly ask the international community to recognize culture as a dimension in sustainable development, and to provide to our members, first to our members, but also to nations and to colleagues in civil society with tools that we are using to support the cultural policies of cities and local governments. The Rome Charter is our last baby. This is a proposal from Rome, from the Deputy Mayor on Culture, Luca Bergamo, who, in the context we are living, suggested we should emphasize the relation between development and human rights, and specifically the right to participate in cultural life, Article 27 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We agreed to support this process, to work with Rome, with experts, with colleagues, with members, with partners, to have a new document, the 2020 Rome Charter, specifically focusing on the right to participate in cultural life, the right to freely participate in cultural life. And this is where we are. The first document was released in May. It was very well received by our executive bureau, the Executive Bureau of United Cities and Local Governments. And the final document will be presented at the conference we are organizing in October, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd October. And it is also sure that this document will go to the World Council of UCLG, of United Cities and Local Governments, for its formal adoption in November. This is a work in progress, and this seminar will allow us to improve, to learn, to widen our circles of friends, colleagues, and to make the document better. I think that's all from my side. Again, thank you, Zaid. Thank you to you all for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jordi. And before I pass it on to Francois, I would like to add that, of course, we are here ready then to answer to any question you have, but let me add one element to what Jordi said regarding the fact that we as a city, we understood that the issue of cultural rights and participation to the cultural life of the city, the free participation, is an issue also in Rome. I mean, Rome is a very particular city, very difficult, even if one might think that it's the womb of culture and heritage and all this. So because of the difficulty of the city, also the physical difficulty of the city, we have been working a lot in the past 4 years. And when we decided with Jordi and UCLG and partners to work on the charter, it was because we needed to reflect on this issue together, because we believe that what is the need, we understood that what is the need of Rome is the need of any other community, bigger or smaller, that we have. And we realized that there are some principles, some elements that were common among all of us. And that's the basis behind the preamble and the document you have read. And now, and I'm really glad that today's meeting will help us in shaping this. As Jordi were saying, on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of October, we are holding this online conference. So we hope you would all join. We'll send you more information through Zaid maybe, or through the Rome Charter website. And to discuss what are the implementation, what it means to implement a charter like this in different contexts. And because we know that, of course, situations are different from any place of the world from which we are. We realized this in this first part of the process, and now it's pretty clear. So today it's very interesting also for us to exchange and understand how it resonates with you. But before going into that, Francois, maybe you want to say something more about the text and the capabilities and what's behind that, and how we arrived to that text, which we hope you enjoyed.
Thank you, Carla. And thank you, Zaid. Thank you, everyone, for the invitation to be here with you today. I have to say I've never been in South Africa, and so I'm even more conscious than usual of the limits of my understanding of the realities we're going to be talking about. I will just say a few words about what the culture tries to do, so that you can, I hope we'll begin to open up the discussion and the conversation. From the very beginning, the first conversations that we had, it seemed to me really important to try and achieve a document that could fit onto one page. And I'm glad that it does, even though if you download it, you'll find 10 pages, because there's always stuff that gets added. But the essential thing fits onto one page, and I'll explain why in a moment. The other thing that I think is important is that it doesn't define culture at all, or art, or any of these things, except by acknowledging that culture is always the expression of values. By that I mean that culture, what we do in culture, what we make in culture, what we protect in culture, is always a way of saying, this matters to me in one way or another. This is important to me. This is the sense that I have of what is important about my life, about life itself, whatever. That's what I mean by this sense that culture is the expression of values. In saying that I hoped it could be one page, many of the early conversations I had with Carla, with Jordi, with Luca and others, was about how this document could be meaningful to the people who live in Rome. That it, unless it could actually speak to them, and I don't underestimate what I'm saying here, but unless it could speak to them, then it actually, I didn't think would be useful, would just be another of the many policy documents that are produced. And it wouldn't live up to the rhetoric that we often have about democracy, particularly in the context of culture. So for me, that meant that it had to have a number of characteristics. One was that it should be understandable, and the language, the core concept of the 5 capabilities, I think is understandable. I'll come back to that because it requires some qualification. The second is that I wanted it to be memorable. And that's why I would say, if you ask me what the Rome Charter is, I would say that it is a promise from a city or a cultural institution to enable people to fulfill 5 simple capabilities: to discover, to enjoy, to create, to share, to protect culture, their own, other people's, their common culture. But those 5 words, discover, enjoy, create, share, protect, are the heart of the Rome Charter. And for me, in all of my work, I believe strongly that we, as human beings, we only act on things that we can remember. If we have to keep going back to the document, then it can't act easily in our everyday life. The third key characteristic that I thought it should have is that it should be interpretable or open to interpretation. In other words, and as you can see from those 5 words, it is specifically not trying to say this is what should be done, but whatever discovering culture means to you is of equal value and equal validity as what it means to your neighbor or to somebody in another country of another age, gender, sexual orientation, religion, whatever. It is specifically designed to be a document that people are invited to make something of. It does not try to make something of them. It says, you can do this, you can do with this what you will. And the final quality that I thought the document should have is that it should be actionable. In other words, that it should directly lead and encourage people to take action, which is why the 5 words that are that define the capabilities are all verbs. They are doing things. So discovering culture, creating culture, sharing culture, protecting culture, enjoying culture. They're all things we can do. And if there is an aspiration to, I hesitate to use the word universal, but at least to a global resonance or applicability of this thinking, it's because I think I can imagine that anyone from Ulaanbaatar to Cape Town, from Rio to Paris, would want for themselves to be able to discover, create, share, enjoy, and protect culture, and would want that for their children. Now, what that might mean in practice would be very, very different to all of them, to all 7 or 8 billion of us. We all have our own sense of what that will mean. But I think that those are all things that I hope nobody would say, I don't want to discover culture. I don't want to enjoy culture. I don't want to protect culture. I know human beings are infinitely varied, and there are people who will reject that, but I think there'll be few. So 2 other things to say about the charter before I pass back to Carla and to your own discussion and responses to it. One of the things that may surprise some people is there is no discussion of any of the key or the common discourses, justifications around culture. It doesn't talk about the creative economy. It doesn't talk about how how culture can be a route to prosperity, or towards social inclusion, or strengthening people's skills or learning, or any of those widely discussed justifications for culture, which I understand and I've contributed to myself in the past. I didn't avoid them because I don't think that they're important or real, but because policy goals change, justifications change. They change from place to place, and they change over time. And in particularly in the context of the pandemic that we're now living, it's very evident to me that most of the the economic models that have sustained the development of certainly public and also private culture in the last 40 or 60 years, those models, I think, are simply inapplicable in the evolving situation that we are having to live with. So that's why there's the Charter focuses on capabilities rather than policy goals or justifications, because they change, but capabilities do not. Our ability to, what I mean by capabilities, I'm taking the concept of Martha Nussbaum, Amartya Sen, and others to talk about our capacity to do the things that seem good to us to do in life. That freedom, that ability to flourish ourselves as people, as individuals and communities, That's what I mean. And I think those things essentially don't change. They are to do with good health. They are to do with education. They are to do with a freedom of action and expression and so on. The final thing I would say, what all that leads to is my hope that the Rome Charter is a way of thinking. It is not a prescription. It does not say, as many policy documents try to do, this is what should happen, this is how you should organize things, this is what you should offer people. But it offers people in very different parts of the world, in very different situations, a way of thinking about culture and cultural action. And then a way of talking about it together, as I hope we'll do today. And finally, and this brings me right back to the sense that this is, in inspiration and intention, a democratic initiative, a way of questioning. Because unless we as citizens understand what our governments, or indeed the cultural institutions that they subsidize and support and promote, unless we understand what they say they are trying to do for us, we cannot question whether they are actually doing that or whether we want them to do those things. And that, for me, is one of the biggest weaknesses of cultural policy generally, that it remains largely opaque and inaccessible to the citizens it is intended to benefit. And as such, it prevents those people from asking questions about its choices and its implementation. So I hope that the Rome Charter is a way of overcoming some of those obstacles. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francois. And yes, I always said so, and I will repeat it with a lot of happiness regarding this. I think happiness is the right word. The Charter has been a process, and it's meant to be a process. It's meant to spark conversation, to spark questions, to inspire reflections. And one of the things that we have been discussing a lot, it's like, okay, how do we write something that somehow allows questions to come out rather than give answers? How do we write something that allows people to reflect on what they have to do and think like, okay, if I do this, are the implications somehow in the field of what we are discussing here? So I hope that this is something that you also feel. And I think that regarding a sort of presentation, quite unconventional, of the Charter without any slide, I'm happy. I hope we gave you a sense of the work done. Then Zaid, I'll leave it on to you, maybe to see if we can answer to any question you might have or contribute to the conversation. Thank you once more for being here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Carla. Thank you very much, Francois. Thank you very much, Jordi. That was a really rich input. And I think it really supports the kind of the document that hopefully a lot of people would have looked at. So hopefully questions will come up after the dialogue, and we are recording. So if there's a challenge for yourselves, we'll have that material available. So in our next section, our cultural and government actors from South Africa will discuss the issues, and we're having quite a parochial South African dialogue, because I did feel that we had a lot of international dialogues in the lead up to the Charter, and sometimes it's quite interesting to think about these issues at a very local level and to try and have a group of people who are grappling with the same local context to have a dig at it from their side. This session will be facilitated by Avril Joffe, who's the head of the Wits Art School's Cultural Policy and Management Department. And she will introduce the various speakers on the panel. And can I ask all the panelists to please turn on their video if they they're okay with their sound quality and connection. Thank you so much.
So thank you very much, Zaid, and thank you to Carla and to Francois and to Jordi for that really useful introduction and outline of what is a very short but packed with punch document that I think those of us in South Africa really are happy to see, because a lot of our policy documents tend to be rather long and windy. And so I just wanted to say to Francois Matarosa, who says he's never been to South Africa, and I see he's put his video off. You might not have ever been to South Africa, Francois, but we know you. In my degree that we teach at Wits School of Arts in the Cultural Policy and Management Department, we use your work a lot. So some of my students who are here today and those who will be watching this video later on, or we'll use it for teaching, are very happy to be able to see your face and to put a face to the name of some amazing work that we've been so privileged to be able to read about. I think one of the most important things is that we've got a fantastic panel, and I don't want to take up too much time, but our panel consists of not only government heads of you really senior people in different government departments, but also civil society actors, and that is such an important part of our own local character as a country, is to always ensure that we have a civil society activist response to anything that we're doing. So I'm really glad that we have that mix here. And it's also wonderful to have both Department of Sports, Arts and Culture as well as COCTA here today, because they represent the local government department, or the department that deals with local government as well as many other things, and the department that deals with arts and culture. And I think this dialogue is an important one as well. So I just wanted to pick up just 2 or 3 things. That one of the things that was said earlier is that, you know, we're really looking for conditions that make a better society. And I think COVID-19 has just shown us that we desperately need to do better. That what we have seen is that all the deep inequalities, the structural problems in our society have been just made much more, have been bared for all to see, and we need to do better. And I love the idea that culture was not defined, because I think that takes away some of the contestation we always have about what culture we're talking about, whose culture we're talking about. That culture is the expression of values, that almost nobody could argue with the points that Francois was saying about those capabilities, about enjoying, discovering, sharing, protecting, and so on. And I think that as much as this was done in a global North city, and I think that's going to come up, I want to just say up front that, you know, Rome is one of the, you know, a really unique city of in many ways, as Carla said, a kind of seen as the home of culture. But I think the things that we are reading in the Rome Charter are valid for villages, towns, urban settlements, townships, as well as cities. So I think I'm really hoping that that comes out of your reflections. And I'm going to invite you one by one in the order that we have you to just reflect on what this means to you. What does this charter say to you? What about it do you feel you want to highlight? What, you know, and really just how does it resonate for some of the things that you're doing in your own work, in your own professional world? So I want to start off by introducing Dr. Stella Khumalo, who I've not had the privilege to meet, but she's our new DDG in the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. I'm really happy to welcome Dr. Khumalo to this panel, and I'd love to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Avril, and thank you, Zaid, for inviting me to be part of this discussion. And also thank you very much to the brief outline, including the video that we've just had a privilege of listening to. From Kayla, thank you, Jordi, and also Francois for the comments. And all your comments, I must say, assisted further in shedding a lot of light and clarifying, you know, what we've read in the charter itself. We've read, and I think as all of us have read the charter, it draws the emphasis to a lot of pertinent issues. And I like the way it depicts Rome as a city working towards the cultural democracy of its people. And it imagines a more inclusive, democratic, and sustainable city. And I think for me, just reading that, it really forced me to reflect on my own country and where my own country actually, South Africa, comes from. And I must actually also say, Francois, you are losing out on a lot, not having been to South Africa, and hopefully once all this is over, what we are experiencing at this point in time, you will find time to visit South Africa. But let me come back to the topic of the day. The key defining elements for me, Avril, and I like what, was it Francois, actually calls them in terms of the 5 capabilities. I think that was Francois who said, he referred to those as the 5 capabilities: discover, create, share, enjoy, and protect. And as I was reading them, I got to just, even though, as you correctly say, the document itself doesn't attempt to define the word culture, but I just got to reflect on what is it that I believe culture to be. And for me, it is a person's culture is an integral part of their fabric as a being, shaping many facets of their life and informing the understanding of the world, how I understand the world. Now, coming from South Africa, you know, while I want to actually focus on the charter itself, I have to just outline where my thinking actually comes from, what informs my own thinking as a South African who grew up in this country. I know that traditionally, the word culture has been used to refer to the ways of life of a specific group of people, including various ways of behaving, their belief systems, their values. Somebody mentioned the word values, customs, dress, personal decoration, social relationships, my religion, the symbols I'm using or we using, and the different codes that we are. They all, you know, when you bring them together, they talk about what one understands to be the culture of that particular community. Now, there's a lot of pitfalls in the term culture. For instance, if here in South Africa, we get a European visitor that comes to South Africa and innocently inquires about the nature of the African culture. Before I joined the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, I was working for one of the tourism attractions in South Africa, which is well visited by international visitors. And we had a lot, you know, around questions around our African culture. And we know for a fact that as South Africans, that inquiry clearly makes very little sense, because there's Xhosas, there's Zulus, there's Pedis, there's Afrikaners, you name it. So, and I was asking myself as I was reading the Rome culture in terms of, can we ever reach a consensus about what the term culture really denotes? Is there such a thing as a white culture, for instance, Avril, a colored culture, a Zulu culture, for instance? And I just want to touch upon very quickly, I know I've been given 5 minutes. In South Africa, and as all the panel members would be aware, the question of definition according to race and culture carries an especially very sharp edge to it, which potentially makes it more contentious, a very contentious issue here in particular. This primarily is due to the policies of the apartheid government that sought to distinguish and segregate the country according to rigid definition of race between the period 1948 and 1994. These policies led to a creation of what we called Bantustans. You know, as South Africa, we would recognize that name. For this reason, subsequent attempts to define the people of South Africa may easily carry a very unpleasant connotation of racist categorization from the past. Proviso, South Africa has a hugely diverse population, representative of a vast spectrum of different languages, cultural practices, values. So as I read the Rome Charter, I began to think about what the so-called rainbow nation, and we know that term came from our Honorable Desmond Tutu, who crafted the word, and it was used a lot about the by the late Nelson Mandela. Now, South Africa is made of diverse cultures and religion, which I suppose same thing would apply to Rome, but I stand to be corrected. And I was looking at the charter as against my own understanding of South Africa, which is composed of all these various influences and it becomes very essential that in helping South Africa to understand and respect each other and learn from each other's cultural practices, we take a leaf from the 5 capabilities that are outlined in the Rome Charter. And for me, as I was reading these 5 capabilities, discover, create, share, enjoy, protect, I looked beyond just looking at your own individual culture. And I think it's 5 capabilities that allow you to be able to look at other people's culture, that we all live together in this lovely South African country. We know for the fact that we have come up with this constitution. Our constitution, I brought it along, and it's got the Bill of Rights. And Jordi, I think Jordi was talking about the issue of the cultural rights and the freedom to participate. If you look at the constitution of our country, it talks about the right to freedom of religion, beliefs, and opinion. And I was thinking, perhaps in terms of this Bill of Rights, we should take a leaf from what the Rome Charter says and specifically talk about the rights of freedom to participate in my own and other people's cultural activities. So there is a lot to learn. And I looked also, Avril, at our National Development Plan, and you will be aware that we call that our vision in 2030. And I saw that there is a specific chapter, chapter 15, that is titled Transforming Society and Uniting the Country. And for me, as I read this, I began to ask myself questions that, like, if you look at the Rome Charter, does it need to begin to identify the key role stakeholders, you know, that would make this particular charter really resonate with the people of Rome, translated to the people of South Africa, if we were to come up with something that is similar? What would be the role of family, for instance? This is what chapter 15 of our National Development Plan talks about. The role of which for me is the nucleus of any community. So I was looking at what would sustain the Rome Charter and make people buy into it. Maybe, to use Francois' words, make it memorable. Make it memorable. I think those are the words that Francois was actually uses. What is the role of the family as the nucleus of any community in the Rome Charter? Charter, for instance? What is the role of the schools? And for me, I'm talking schools because as older people, I don't know whether there's anybody young in this panel, but as older people, we need to have the younger generation begin to participate actively in whatever policies we are putting in place. And it becomes important that those are the young people are the ones that are not influenced by the ills of the past. And they are more open, they are more receptive. To what extent does the Rome Charter, in the engagements that you have had, use this particular key stakeholder, that is the young people, to make sure that you influence the mindset? Because for me, that is where the shift actually needs to happen. There's a number of things that I need to talk about, but maybe when you give me the opportunity again, Avril, I will talk to that. But I think at this point in time, let me just stop by saying what I see, and this is what our National Development Plan talks about. I see the role of media becoming very important in terms of making sure that there is access to all these interventions that we are talking about. We know our challenges in South Africa in terms of implementation of policies. And if we look at the approach adopted by the Rome Charter, a very simple, user-friendly document. And I think for me, I really appreciate being given this opportunity and having insight in what is contained in the Charter. I don't know whether I went beyond the time to me, but for me, this is a topic that is very close to my heart. And thank you once again for inviting me to participate. Thanks, Avril.
Thank you, Dr. Kumalo. Thank you, Stella Kumalo. You did go over time, but I think what you were saying was so vital and important. And I think you raised a very important point about connecting the Rome Charter to things we've already agreed to do. Our Bill of Rights is our founding document that basically says we have the right to enjoy the cultural life of our community. And I mean, that is then enshrined again in the National Development Plan and in our revised white paper and in the work that is done in the department. But I think what is always missing, and you said that, is about how do we implement it in such a way that it actually gives life to it. And what I really love about the Rome Charter is that it's taking, and I think Francois said that in the opening statements, it's not about social inclusion or social cohesion or economic impacts. It's about the right of culture and about how that influences democracy. So I think you've really provided us with a very nice outline of your thinking, and thank you very much for taking the time. And I agree that we have some young people on this panel, but we're going to go to another one of our elders, Phyllis Klotz. I consider myself an elder too, and I think it's nice to be an elder sometimes because we have wisdom to share, and we have a duty to pass on and to make these views and to bring these connections together. But I agree with you, our continent is such a youthful continent, and our country as well, that obviously the voice of the youth is so important, but we do have some young people who will come later. So Phyllis, over to you. Phyllis is the founder and director of one of our centers of our community art centers of excellence called Sibikwa on the East Rand. And Phyllis, it's wonderful to have you here. I know this is a passionate area in your world of work, and over to you.
Thank you, Avril, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. What I'm about to say, I know many South Africans will really find this hard to digest, but I don't actually have much to say, because when I read this document, I thought to myself, wow, this is what we've been hoping for, a document such as this, all these years. Sibikwa has been in operation for 32 years, and we have, without kind of defining it in any way, tried to practice, discover, create, share, enjoy, and protect throughout our existence. So this really speaks to us. It is an aspirational document. And one of the things that we really hope is that it can translate into some, just as those 5 words that Francois mentioned are words of action, that it can translate into some form of action. Also, I think we need to consider and maybe this is a topic for later, but what do we mean in the current situation? What do we mean by participation? And getting back to what Dr. Kumanda said, like the family is the nucleus. We always try at Sibikwa to have family participation in our events. If I think back in the old days, parents and children, we used to bring material, waste material, and they used to make costumes and have a parade and all be together. Since COVID, okay, we've been no longer able to do that. So now we're looking at data and digital and virtual performances. And what we found to our surprise is that this also has been a center of participation for families. Everyone has enjoyed the instructions that their children have got from us on various programs. So when we're going to talk of participation in the future, and we're going to talk about how we are creating, how we are sharing, what we are enjoying, I think a lot of our thinking has to shift as well, because COVID has shown us that. I think really that's all that I've got to say. I'm very happy to be part of this discussion. Maybe I'll have more to say later, but really this is an inspirational document, and I hope that many people will start thinking about what this document means and how to apply it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Phyllis. And I think that the reminder that COVID, as much as it's been painful and there's been grief and trauma and lots of real hardship for people, there's also been some interesting positive developments, such as what you said about families learning to enjoy things and culture together. I think that's something that we also have to keep reminding ourselves of, what we want to retain about this period. And I want to even suggest that what you're saying about Sibikwa, always practicing these 5 capabilities, perhaps as we start talking about these capabilities more overtly in almost everything that we are doing, I'm sure when we come to Ditsong and all the for the arts, we're going to remind ourselves again, this is what we all are wanting to do. And maybe if we all start using this language, it will infiltrate or penetrate into the heartbeat of how we talk about culture in a different way. So thank you for that. And I'd like now to move to Mtobeli Kolisa, who I haven't met, but welcome. He's from a very important organization that is so important in this context, the South African Local Government Association. We call it SALGA. And Mtobele, it's really wonderful to have you here, and I'd love you to share some of your views.
Thank you, Avril, and good afternoon to all in this session. Thank you for the opportunity and also the presentation on the charter. I think I would start, for those who may not be familiar with our association, just by indicating who we are, so that when we apply ourselves in this, in terms of what the charter is and what it means to us, is in the context of that. That as an association of municipalities in South Africa, we have 3 categories of municipalities, to which the capabilities expressed in the charter may have different in a way. We've got metropolitan municipalities that I would call the ones that you can say are a melting pot of culture, or are supposed to be a melting pot of culture. I'll talk about why they're supposed to be later. We've got district municipalities, which are made up of groups of local municipalities. And then the local municipalities themselves, which are predominantly structured in a way of being organizations with an urban core and a vast rural space. Now, within that, we then have a role of municipalities as defined in the Constitution. I think I want to locate this in the context of the objects of local government as expressed in the Constitution of the country. which is section 152 of the Constitution. Subsection C of that particular section states that one of the objects of local government is to promote social and economic development. And I think I want to locate the contribution potentially that local government can make in the context of that. And I want to believe that the charter as presented is very relevant in our context. For the past 26 years, as South Africa, we have been, I would say, struggling to build from our past of institutionalized oppression and marginalization of the majority of citizens. At a local level, it means that local leadership have to pull now these groups together to create a society that we aspire. The national effort that local government is trying to contribute towards is that of building a united, non-racial, democratic, and prosperous society from the diverse groups that we find in our communities. However, the historical marginalization and deprivation has resulted in municipalities and generally the country predominantly focusing on what we can call developmental tangibles, like access to water, access to electricity, and within that we still have many challenges, even in terms of that. But that focus on developmental tangibles, as I can call them that, I think in some cases may have been at the expense of really activating the glue that should hold the diversity of our communities together, that is culture. Mainly because because of that focus on the tangibles, we have thought that once you give access to those, then there'll be harmony. But I don't get to that if we don't pay attention to the expression of existence in the form of culture. So therefore, I think we need to say the statements of capabilities in the Roman culture, in the 2020 Roma Charter, become quite important as a guide and an activator of the elements that I think are important. Because in bringing our communities together, we've got to discover each other. And local leadership has a responsibility of mobilizing that interdiscovery of each other as expressed in the culture. We've got to create something that we share as communities, as these diverse communities. And of course, share that which we are creating. We've got to energize our communities to enjoy being united in diversity. And then we've got to protect that we have developed. So all of these capability statements to us carry a lot of meaning of what we can do at a local level to lead our communities to the kind of society that we want to create. So in a way, we want to say that the charter, as has been presented to us, has a lot of resonance to what we can do at a local level as municipalities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the words from Salga. I think I love the idea of needing to activate the glue that holds us together, because I think that's so true. If we only look at the developmental tangibles, as you put it, that doesn't necessarily it doesn't touch our soul. It doesn't help create something that says who we are, why we've chosen to live there, how we're going to live with one another. And you use the word sort of discover one another. And so I think, again, like with what Phyllis Klotz says around using those capabilities in her own work, you've already shown that you have adopted those capabilities in even just discussing what you feel the role of local government is. So I think we are really beginning to start seeing the way it's resonating in different fields. So thank you very much for your presence here, Mtobile. I think it's wonderful that Salga is participating in this, and I hope we can continue these conversations post this particular event. I'd like now to move to Annabelle Lebete, who is the CEO of Ditsong Museums, an agency of government. It's one of the flagship museum projects. Annabelle's got a long history in the culture and creative sector, and I'm really glad to have, we are getting younger as we go. Annabelle, over to you.
Thanks, Avril. Afternoon, everybody, and to my fellow panelists, and to Zaid as well for the invitation. I think I wanted to say that the thing that struck me the most was the simplicity of the Rome Charter. You know, I read it and I kept thinking there must be more. It can't just be 10 pages, you know. Where's the rest of this 1,000-page document that we're so used to? And it was simple, it was concise, and as Francois said, it was understandable. And the capabilities for me spoke directly to, I think, personal aspirations and organizational aspirations. You know, personally, it's about who I am as a South African Black female and my heritage and the tools and the means to express my cultural existence through heritage, through programs, through a variety of things. But also at an organizational level, it's about how the Rome Charter and specifically, I think it was Discover, Share and Protect, which speaks very much to the responsibilities that we as a legislated entity have to ensure that we are literally doing all of those 5 things and more, right? And it's about, the simplicity for me was about the other, understanding the world that we live in and how much that world is about. We are all trying to grapple with issues of diversity, issues of racism, issues of sexism, so many isms that we are grappling with. But how it's managed to concisely and succinctly encapsulate all our aspirations, our cultural aspirations, our social aspirations, our human aspirations. You know, we want to exist in a world that allows us the space and the freedom to express who we are and to celebrate our diversity. We want to live in a world that, especially now in 2020, with the madness that we're seeing across the world, and the madness that we're seeing in our countries, in our cities, in our communities. We want to live in a world that holds true to those values and those expressions. Because if we're not glued together by a common desire to appreciate our humanness, then we've literally lost the boat, we've missed the memo. So for me, the Charter, looking at how it speaks directly to what we do at the museum, and I think broadly across the country, you know, museums and other cultural institutions, it's about the discovery element. You know, we're wanting to learn more of the other, we're wanting to understand more of the other. We're wanting our country to appreciate and to recognize the role of what culture is and the role that culture plays at a micro level and at a macro level, you know. And I think we sometimes, we become too verbose in our explanations of culture, and through policies that we literally miss how simple it is. And again, I come back to the simplicity of this charter, to be able to contextualize a world or Rome in 2020. And as we said, Avril, it's those capabilities could easily be transferred to a Johannesburg, a Cape Town, a Durban, a Polokwane. Those capabilities speak to the essence of who we are as human beings. But our role as an institution working in the heritage sector is firstly to protect and to preserve, particularly the cultures of society. And I'm always confounded by how significant and how important that role is. And that this responsibility itself speaks to past generations, but also future generations, right? And yet here's a document that's simply saying, as I think it was Geordie earlier on, you know, we carry on. We have to find a way to carry on in the madness of how things are, right? So we do it through museums by collecting objects, artifacts, specimens, so that we're able to better understand the other, so that we're better able to talk about issues of heritage and diversity, so that we're able to learn the lessons that a contemporary society needs to learn from things that happened in 1819 or the First World War, the Second World War, or all these other sort of manifestations of life that have been put literally in a capsule for contemporary society to be able to appreciate and engage in and learn from. So that's how we protect culture. And we discover new things all the time. We're discovering new societies, we're discovering new cultures, we're discovering every day what COVID means, but living in a pandemic world that we never possibly could have imagined. And we're having to go back into history to learn those lessons about a contemporary pandemic in 2020. And so our responsibility is to be able to share that knowledge, to share those experiences, to share that history, and to say that the irrespective of how old or dated museums are said to be, that knowledge and that history is relevant today, because you are discovering something. It might be new in a contemporary world in 2020, but we had the Spanish flu in 1917, 1918. And it's literally more or less the same conversations that we're having about protection and security and social distancing and. So those parallels are sort of futuristic in a sense. And the role that museums play in presenting those parallels, I think, cannot be underestimated. And so for me, the Charter speaks to everybody must find their niche in what they do. You know, we are citizens, we live in communities, and therefore, how do the sustainability goals as well, sustainable development goals, come into our existence in our communities and in our cities? And cities need to come to the party. I think South African cities need to come to the party. And I appreciate my panelists who just went before me, Ntobeli Kodisa, who just spoke his role at SALGA. And I think there's a lot more that at a local level we can do to literally bring down the issues that we grapple with at national level, at international level, and make those policy discussions real. It's only at local level that policies can be given life, that museums that are in cities, who are part of the cultural landscape and the asset base of cities, can begin to prove themselves because we are in communities. With that said, I really hope this is a document that we can talk about more often. You know, I hope that our own policies going forward can be as simple and interpretable and user-friendly and understood, because I think we need to simplify our lives. COVID has taught us we really need to simplify our lives, and culture can do that.
Thank you so much, Annabelle. Thank you for really, you know, digging deep into your own sort of sense of why you do what you do, to give life and resonance and meaning to this charter. And I think you're absolutely correct that, in fact, one of the things I was going to say to Dr. Kumalo and even to the next speaker who's coming after, Stephanie Chetty, is could we think about translating this into our 11 official languages, so that it is read widely? And could we now maybe look at the revised white paper on arts, culture and heritage in the light of this, and to say, how can we use it to help simplify and make more, I don't know, meaningful and accessible what it is, that very important document that I was part of writing. But these drafters and Francois and Geordie, you know, and everybody that you spoke to come to this. Somebody said in the chat, you need to be lauded for really being able to write a document that those of us on the tip of Africa are all so far saying this has huge resonance and meaning to all of us. And so, yeah, I just wanted to make sure you guys are also reading those the chats as they come along. So thank you very much. And I think, you know, one of the things for me that is so critical in even any discussion of culture is what it means to me is that it's about developing the critically engaged citizen who questions everything. And these 5 capabilities gives us a space to say, are we discovering our cultural roots? How can we do better? Are we creating cultural expressions? Are we seeing them? Are they visible? How can we do better? Are we sharing our creativity? How can we do better? Are we enjoying the cultural life of our communities? How can we do better? Are we protecting that which, as Annabella says, has come before us for future generations? How can we do better? I think it helps frame so many conversations. So with that said, I'd like to move to Stephanie Chetty, who is from the other department that I mentioned, Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Department. We call it COCTA for short, for our international guests. And Stephanie is the Director of Urban Policy Development and Management. You're very welcome. Thank you for being here. Over to you.
Thank you, Avril. Good afternoon, colleagues. And it's been such a pleasure to listen in to the conversations by Carla, Jordi, and Francis, and then the previous speakers. I think it brings such enlightenment to the Rome Charter and the discussion thus far. So I think a lot has been said, and for me, the Charter alone resonates as a visionary and a guiding document. You know, it brings so much in the sense that it speaks directly to people. And, you know, it reaches out to not just any form or hierarchy or level, but to people of all stature, all culture, all values. And I think it's so much that we can take out from and learn from as South Africa. So I just wanted to say, like, listening to some of the conversations and the notes and the speaking, I don't want to actually mention them again or repeat anything that the previous speakers have said, but I just want to say, you know, this resonates so well with what we're actually seeing now in South Africa. So currently, we all know that in South Africa, we are faced with the similar disparities in society and in our cities. COVID-19 didn't bring about them, but merely exposed the injustices brought about by apartheid, and thereby creating even a further divide amongst the poor. And it's brought more marginalization and exposing the inequalities that still exist in society. But we are so grateful at this time to have the leadership that we have from our President, Cyril Ramaphosa, and we thank him for his decisive decision to, you know, turn the country into lockdown and put in those strict measures regulated by the National Disaster Management Act. And the fast thinking has actually brought about such positive outcomes, you know, even though, yes, we are mindful of the debts that it's brought and, you know, the disadvantages to many. But it's brought so many advantages in the sense that communities have benefited so much from these capabilities, and it reflects very, very well with what the Rome Charter is actually saying in terms of focusing on people and the needs, and, you know, how we should actually enjoy and how we should create and share and protect one another. And I think what this lockdown has done is it's brought about opportunities in the middle of a pandemic, and we've seen a culture of diversity, we've seen a culture of strength, of love and support. We do still have a lot to learn from. We do still have a lot in our society that we're still dealing with and addressing as we go along. But I think what the focus is on, and what resonates quite well with the Rome Charter, is that there's a focus on people and the needs and the right to discuss and access this culture, the living, the freedom, the right and democracy of expression. So I know that I am from national government, and I don't want to speak as a government official, but I want to speak as a person, because I've been given this opportunity to see and embrace what is happening in and around us. So I just want to say I support the charter and I support the processes and what it's unfolding. I think it's very useful. I think it opens up the gaps of what culture should be really doing and what it ought to do. And I think also from a policy perspective, when you're looking at from a national government now, I'm going to speak, what it does is that it creates an enabling environment for an all-of-society approach. And I like that the Charter gives this discussion and the debate to allow for international inputs. And I like that it's also going to be looking forward thinking, and then there's also the processes to follow for a conference and further engagements. And for one, we are working at the Department of Cooperative Governance on the Integrated Urban Development Framework. It's an enabling platform for all of society, enabling a voice to be heard, a platform to showcase the work on culture, uniqueness, and society through the IUDF, which is South Africa's first urban policy to address urbanization and spatial transformation. We have in particular reference to policy lever 7, which is empowered active communities. And I think that the Rome Charter resonates quite well with how we see the 5 capabilities coming out from here. Because what the IUDF does is it responds to cities that cannot succeed without the investment of their citizens, and the powers of cities that resonates in its ability to bring together social and cultural diversity. And it's about democratic citizenship at the core of active citizenship, empowers communities to share and contribute to the development of space, and will transform the quality of life. And I think that is the intention of the Rome Charter. You know, it says that it's a particularly charter that can be adopted in other cities. And as we move forward, we can learn a lot and take this concept and present it directly to our cities, to our municipalities, and look at the opportunity to strengthen government's capability in institutionalizing partnership and other organs of state, and including all of society, which is also civil society, NGOs, academia, and continue even strengthening international partnerships and policies to adopt the same nature. So for me, I think this is a fantastic experience. I certainly do think that there should be many other conversations to unfold and to come from. I think I like the previous speaker has said, I think it's simplicity and it's very easy to understand. I think that it doesn't have a role that defines who is in society and what culture should be. I think I also want to resonate quite well with what the DDG has said from DISTEC on the opportunity that we can transform this into the various languages and the cultures that we have here in South Africa. So I think that's my contribution to the discussion. I look forward to comments and questions. Thank you very much, Avril.
Thank you very much, Stephanie, and thanks so much for being here. And I think, you know, thanks for commenting on how it resonates in your professional world of work in the department. And I think that the fact, and I think what you said is so true, that it's providing an enabling environment for a whole of society approach. And I think so much of our government stresses about how to develop policies around culture. But in fact, if we start thinking about what do citizens want, how do citizens want to behave and be, then the policies need to follow what citizens want and where they want to express their culture, how they want to discover their roots, how they want to do all these capabilities we're talking about. If it starts more from a listening perspective and saying, what do we need to provide in order to do that? It's less of this top-down, we need to provide it all, and it's more about, this is how people want to live their lives. And I think this time of COVID has really shown how people are saying how they want to live their lives in a more, you know, kinder, more gentler, less traumatized way. And, you know, I think what you said resonated so nice with what Annabelle said about, you know, what we've seen around the world around Black Lives Matter and so on, that imagine if everybody had adopted the Rome Charter before COVID. We might not have had, we might have already started on the journey of discovering a more kinder, gentler, more appreciative of one another process. And I think for South Africa, that's such an important part. So thank you for being here and for your comments. Our last panelist is young. So for those who wanted young but vibrant and passionate about what she does. So Ariel Huang, thank you for being here. Ariel is the Deputy Director of the Johannesburg Youth Orchestra. She's also, for me, importantly, the convener of the Cultural Policy Working Group of a sort of new movement that's formed during COVID, became really big and powerful, called For the Arts, which has given voice to very many young artists who were just feeling so frustrated and left out of all discussions, of access to understandings, and when COVID hit and the lockdown hit, feeling really frustrated about not being able to express their own creativity and to access COVID relief. And so Ariel is a co-convener of something called the Cultural Policy Working Group. Ariel, it's lovely to have you here, and it's been nice to hear your views.
Thank you, Avril and colleagues, and to our hosts and organizers. Hello from Johannesburg, Sanibonani, Dumelang, Molweni, buon pomeriggio a tutti, e grazie mille per questa opportunità. Complimenti per la produzione di questo fantastico documento. So I have very fond memories of Rome from a visit in 2014. So for me, the Rome Charter is a very well-designed springboard to ask the questions of essentially, how does culture make us human? How does it affirm our identities, and what are those identities? It also enables us to express and share our humanity with those around us, and why there is such a fundamental need to do so. So COVID-19, as echoed, has permitted us all to pause and reset. And in coming around the table to discuss the deepening and expanding of cultural capabilities to discover, to create, to share, to enjoy, to protect, I'd like to ask, who has been historically and previously excluded? And what are the mechanisms in place to ensure they are the ones first and foremost being considered? And how are those 5 verbs actioned in a sustained and sustainable manner? So Stephanie had referred to positive developments and enabling environments. So as a human being, as an individual, I resonate very much with the Charter because I believe deeply in the right to participate fully and freely in cultural life. And I also have the Constitution here, referring specifically to freedom of artistic creativity. So as everyone mentioned, I'm the convener for the Cultural Policy Working Group of for the Arts. I'm also making plans to share this Rome Charter. And we recently drafted our own charter for South African artists, which has been a very different and challenging process. So as a South African, the experience of cities, depending on where one is located, can be isolating and individualistic. So whereas in contrast, communities, on the other hand, are welcoming, inclusive, and one can feel more a sense of Ubuntu. So I'd like to think of life here as community-centered, and perhaps where there is a distinction between the urban and the rural is that sense of collective. How can this charter be used beyond what is typically classified as a city or a community, and echoing what Errol had mentioned earlier, including our townships. So for me, cities don't exist in communities. Communities exist in cities. So in the document, quote, the 2020 Rome Charter imagines a more inclusive, democratic, and sustainable city. Its achievement is in the hands of all who live here. So in order to actualize imagination to reality, for me, it's in the very title of UCLG, the World Organization of United Cities and Local Governments. I think the keywords being united and local governments. Unity highlights the collective effort and strengthens the togetherness of community. Local government, which is well explained earlier by Bram Tobeli, are the institutions closest to the people. Go to the people, find them where they are, and start building from the bottom up, as articulated in the Y section of the Charter. Further on, quote, these statements set our destination. Designing the journey is the next task. We now begin a collaborative and consultation phase to develop detailed cultural policies, plans, and actions specific to local context. So personally, I am curious to learn more about how the collaborative and consultation phase will take place. And I think as shared earlier, local context will really give life to this Rome Charter. So a few more points. I personally would like to see the inclusion and engagement of youth, echoing Dr. Kumalo earlier, since it is the young people who shoulder current cultural legacies and are the ones to create future cultural legacies. Another element to take into consideration is the notion of decolonization. Many of the cities bear European colonial histories, as addressed in the Why Now section of the Charter. How can historic Eurocentrism be avoided? Perhaps I could offer 2 more points of connection: technology and hospitality. How can technology be used to amplify culture and connect culture practitioners? In other words, employing technology to enhance the culture creation and participation of citizens. Hospitality and food. Can you imagine each of these cities and communities without their food and hospitality industry? No. It would be just as devastating and dire as it would be without culture. How can partnerships be forged with related stakeholders outside of their art silos to unite and to strengthen these ties in the communities? Last but not least, I'd like to urge us all to bear in mind and in heart to include those who are displaced from disasters, the asylum seekers and the migrants, the political and increasing climate refugees. As an immigrant myself, being a musician and growing up in a family restaurant, culture gave me a human face instead of the other, which Annabelle alluded to earlier. And it gave me courage to tell my story. It gave me a sense of belonging, and it gave me communities to whom I could contribute to, and hope. Through culture, I could experience and express hope. So as much as all roads leads to Rome, and Rome wasn't built in a day, I appreciate the thoughtfulness, the rigor, and the time it has taken to produce this Rome Charter. And with the spirit of Umuntu Ngumuntu Ngabantu, we can rally together many more cities and enliven the cultural participation of their communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Errol. And yes, I think our youth voice has been very strong in not only suggesting it's going to be taken up in the policy forum of for the Arts, where there are more than 17,000 members, and it's an online thing, given that it's COVID, but that started online on Facebook. So that's really great, and I'm encouraging you to do that, and draw on any people that were in this room today to take that further. But I also think that what you've highlighted a number of things that I think are that maybe others would like to come in on now, because we're now opening it up to the audience. You've mentioned about the important place of the youth in our world of shouldering current legacies, sometimes burdensome legacies, but other times very rich and meaningful legacies. The notion of decolonization and the fact of, and I think that speaks to the heart of the point on page 2, which is beginning the collaborative and consultation phase, which is almost what we're starting here, to develop detailed cultural policies, plans and actions. We're not going to do detailed cultural policies and plans and actions, but we are speaking about the local context. And I think that's how you decolonize something, is you adopt it, amend it, adapt it, refigure it, reconfigure it, translate it, and make it worthwhile for us in our context. And I think that requires the full diversity we've already seen on this panel, which, by the way, we had not really planned for. We just have a great panel. So thank you, everybody, for being on this panel. The other thing you mentioned, I think, is so important, this question about technology to amplify culture. And I think we've seen that during COVID. One of the things I think Salga, Mtobile, if you're still here, Salga, and even Cocta, Stephanie, one of the things that will make the biggest difference to our communities is having Wi-Fi hotspots, free Wi-Fi hotspots placed all around our villages, towns, urban settlements, and cities, for allowing people to interact and enjoy each other's culture, participating in studying, in learning, and in discussing, in conversations, because as this document has said, it's through conversations that we start discovering one another. And I think the idea of related industries coming together, I think, is such an important point about you can't think of a particular city without thinking of its food, its hospitality. So thank you for those comments. I would love to open it up, and I'm hoping those of you who've been putting things in the chat will feel brave enough to stick your hand up and to speak into the Zoom room. And you can post a question to anybody. You can start with Carla, who I'm sure would be willing to respond, to Francois, to Jordi, Pasquale, or to any of the South African panelists. Is there anybody who would like to comment? I've seen quite a lot of interesting conversation around, and I think, Francois, you might want to start with why you didn't use the word citizen, which I thought was very important, if you just want to tell it to the group.
Thank you. It was just something that I was reminded from Ariel talking about inclusion. And in a way, it would have been easier to write the document using the word citizens because it's an easy word to fit into sentences. But we made a specific choice not to do that because we wanted to say that as the charter opens, that cities are the people who live there. Some of them are maybe irregular or undocumented or unwanted for a variety of reasons, but they are all living there and they're all making a contribution. And so it was just an illustration of how carefully we thought about some of the aspects. I'm sure there are lots of other things we missed thinking carefully about, but that was one of the things we did.
Thank you, Francois. I think that's a helpful comment because, yeah, I think we do use words sometimes far too loosely, and it does indicate just how deeply you and your team were crafting this so that it is something that resonates so strongly, as you've heard, and I hope you take some pleasure in that, in how deeply it's resonated with people in this continent in this country. I noticed some people have put their pictures on. Who would like to speak? You can just lift your hand because I can see some of you. I can't see all of you, by the way. Yes, please, Dimitri. Hi.
Hi, Avril. Thanks so much. I thank you for letting me double dip on the question, but this issue of public participation in policy making, I think, is a really key consideration in South Africa at the moment. And for me, what was so interesting about the 5 capabilities is it literally goes beyond this idea of the state calling the people and saying, we're consulting on X, Y, and Z. And then people who do come forward are either ill-informed or they don't have the resources to do the research that would provide the evidence-based policy, for public policy making. So what I really wanted why I asked Francois about the public participation part, because he said doesn't replace it, and it's still very much, but maybe, new model, how do we create the space? Or again, you see, I'm even by saying that, idea we are creating the space for others to come in. So I think you said it, Avril, there's a new language that comes with this, and if we can speak that new, so where does that fit in there? Thanks very much.
And I'm sure one of the things that we have to remember is that the Rome Charter is not replacing all other agreements, documents, conventions that actually speak very soundly to the idea of public participation, such as UNESCO Convention on the Promotion and Protection of the Diversity of Cultural Expressions, which says no policies can be created without the full participation of civil society, of private sector, of NGOs, and so on. And I think what the Rome Charter, and forgive me for speaking on your behalf, but what it feels to me that it's doing is it's coming and it's making an intervention into all of that noise. And it feels like there's a lot of noise in the policy space. And it's making an intervention that somebody said, simplicity. Annabelle mentioned the simplicity a few times. Something about the simplicity of the Rome Charter, and I'd love to see where it fitted onto one page because it printed as 10, but I would love to see like a poster. Imagine just a poster of these words in all our languages, by the way, is what I'm looking for now. And the idea of the simplicity is it cuts through that noise. And I think none of the other issues around public participation or intellectual property rights, I think you also raised a point in the chat around that, are excluded. They are other. They belong in the fuller domain of that we speak about culture and creative industries, a cultural economy, however we want to use whatever words we're looking at. But I think what's so, and everybody's commented on that, is just how very directed and focused, and also how it's taking us away from thinking about what culture can do. We have so much of our culture is about what it does. It creates social cohesion. It has economic impacts. It furthers tourism. This is about what culture does for us. It's how we live in the world as cultural beings. And I think that's what's so beautiful about this particular policy document, is that it's bringing the heart of culture and stripping away all that it can do, the expediency of culture, which we know we have to speak that language sometimes when we speak in government to help government understand where it fits in. But actually, this is taking us back and saying, actually, this is how we live our lives. And so, Francois, again, thank you, and Carla, and all of those of you who've done so much hard work about this, because I think it's what we needed. It's what we need right now. And it will, and I think it's such a beautiful time to be inserting this into our discussions, as we are confronted by the fact that we have recognized that what we had, not only was it not normal, it was evil. The societies that we have created, that we are living in, are not kind, equitable societies where everybody has opportunities. And so I think, yeah, who wants to speak next? Otherwise, I'm speaking too much. Annabelle?
Annabelle, may I add one thing? Because I cannot raise my hand as I'm a host, so I'm not allowed.
You are very much allowed to speak.
Thank you. I just wanted to add one thing, because I was inspired by what I read and what I heard, and Francois knows it very well. My past, I have a lot of experience in participation. That's my past for the last 15, 20 years. And I am experiencing it now in the public field more strongly. And I was in civil society, and now I'm in helping local governments. I'm an advisor to the vice mayor, so I'm feeling it. And apart from thousands of strategies, I can tell you one thing, and the charter does it, and I'm really happy and glad you recognized it. It just needs to speak the language of people. Because otherwise we don't create any dialogue for any kind of participation. It was, Francois knows it very well. It was very hard for all of us, especially because we were many and we don't have the same language. So English was not the language for everybody to express themselves. So it was not very easy, but that's why I meant at the beginning, it was a process. And before any kind of strategy or methodology or anything that we do for participation, language is an invitation. And so I think that was the main thing that we focused on. And I just wanted to add this for myself.
Thank you, Carla.
Thank you.
It's very helpful. It's very interesting to hear the processes that it requires. And I think this is a bit of a policy making, lesson for all of us about the deep diving we have to do, the pausing, the patience, the listening, the deep listening, the recognizing of what language can do. Language can also exclude so many people. And so, Annabelle, over to you. You're muted, Annabelle.
I've just been reminded of a term that Sibongile Khumalo likes to use, which is, she says, everything is about how we language, and looking at language as a verb, it's a doing. How we language can either exclude or include. And I think what's really stands out about the charter is how it's languaged, in that it's simple, it's understandable, it can bear resonance with so many other things that we do. My question, Ev, is to, I think it's Jody and Mr. Kolisa. What is the expectation from UCLG's point around their members who are in UCLG and localizing it here? I'm assuming that Salga is a member of UCLG. I remember hearing the previous chairperson of Salga speaking at a DSAC event that was at Sibikwa, and he was talking about Salga's role in as a member of UCLG and what they're trying to pursue from a cultural development point in cities. So I'm really interested in, are there expectations at the sort of mother body level for member states or for member organizations to localize the charter or to reinterpret it? And as I think Carla just said, don't cut and paste, but something else, cut and make it work for you. So what are the expectations? You know, it's all good and well that we can talk and laud the charter, but how do we bring it here to us, what we do, who we are, you know? Yeah.
Thank you, Annabelle. Who would like to come in there? Jordi?
Just let me say that Jordi wrote to me and he said that he had to leave. So he excuses, and he wanted me to bring his excuses on this. So regarding UCLG, I don't know if I cannot answer for him. So
we should maybe go to Salga then. Thank you for, and tell Jordi we're sorry he had to go.
He said sorry, so
okay.
I didn't jump in before.
Mtobele, do you want to come in on that?
Yes, I would love to come in. I think what I would like to say is, even without an obligation or expectation from UCLG, as I said in my talk, we see this as quite an empowering document that can be used to assist local leadership to build what I can call community cohesion through culture, because it's oriented towards action, to say what can be done, what must we do, what must we do, and in that way, if we take it and use it to assist local leaders, it can in our municipalities be used by our municipalities as a way of energizing what I've called the activation of the glue that holds us together. Because as I said, we can have all of these tangible services out there, but we still will not have communities in the sense of real communities if we don't have an ability to unite around the creation and sharing of common cultural identity.
Thank you for that response. And I think, you know, I would like to invite you to feel free to draw on the panelists that you've seen here today in that work that you do in Salga, because I think there are a lot of us who feel very, very close, it's very close to our hearts that we find a way to bring culture closer to where people are, which means really every local authority in the South African environment, in the landscape. It's so dominated in the big metros. And I think with Salga's support, and I'm sure everybody in this room would agree that it is something that is so needed to actually find ways to live the life of to live a cultural life in your own community, and not always feel you have to be in a big city to enjoy and discover your cultural roots and so on. I saw Phyllis's hand was up. Can I just get an indication of anybody else who wants to speak? Because I think we're going to sort of wrap it up after that. Stephanie as well. So Phyllis, Stephanie, did I hear a grunt?
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
A
So,
groan?
yeah.
Okay.
Mtobile, as I understand it, Salga will be having a conference on culture very soon. And as a way of integrating this and moving forward, could you not, in one of your sessions, introduce the Rome Charter so that people can get a clear understanding of what culture can do, and it's not a difficult document? Is that a possibility at all?
That's a great idea, Phyllis. That's a great idea. I'll take it forward within the organization.
Please. Thank you very much for that suggestion, Phyllis, and thanks, Mtobile, for the quick response. Stephanie is our last contributor here.
Thanks, Avril. Thanks, Mtobile, and I think also Annabelle and Phyllis for that input. I think that would be a nice platform to showcase how we can actually localize the Rome Charter in South Africa. But another suggestion would be is to engage on another session on this platform. I think we have the key lead departments that are here, and we are working with various policy instruments now within the Department of Cooperative Governance, being the district development model, and it is advocating for one plan process and creating that enabling and aligning environment. I think it hasn't been considered how we would take something like this into the adoption of partnership, and considering different spaces, different societies, different types of culture. So I think it'll be nice to start new conversations and have follow-up sessions. I think that would be recommended, and then to see how we can pull some of the learnings into future decision making as government, as the three spheres of government, as civil society, to get the all of society approach in. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephanie. And I would like to also just comment to Mtobeli that there's a request to share the date for the Selga gathering. And if people are invited to, if you could put that in the chat function, that would be great. I think, Ariel, you might also want to have a special session. Maybe we can do a webinar on the Rome Charter in the for the Arts program, where some of this conversation can be taken forward. So I think we need to find different platforms and different spaces where different voices get to be heard from many parts of our very diverse and full society. So from my part, this is the easiest thing to do. Thank you so much. I think everybody has really presented and responded very well to the Charter. I'm hoping that our international colleagues have found something of value to take back to your deliberations from the South African context. I think we have a lot more work to do to start thinking about how this is translated into a local context and what that means. And I think we've had a few good ideas already being shared on this platform. But certainly from what you've heard, I think you'll agree that there's a lot of interest to pursue the conversations about what this Charter opens up, how it impacts on many other types of policy dimensions, but also on the work of SALGA and the work of the departments, on all of our work, really. So from my side, and thank you to Zaid, I think this has been a great session that we've put together, and thank you for making it happen and for instigating it and for driving it and being the champion of these ideas in our context. Zaid Minty. Over to you.
So much. Thank you so much, Avril. So colleagues, as we've reached the end of the dialogue, I want to thank you all again for participating and for our very vibrant discussion. It was great to be listening. Carla, would you like to say something as the main kind of instigator of this project for us?
Thank you so much, Zaid. So I just want to say thank you all. This has been a precious opportunity. It gave us strength. As I said at the beginning, Rome decided to do it as an international process because I think we need a stronger reflection. And I got a lot of notes. I can show you, I'm a very old-fashioned person, so I took a lot of notes on concept you wrote. Just feel free if you want to translate. We are actually uploading all the translation on our website. We just got Russian, we got Turkish, we got Croatian, so Portuguese. So when we are very happy to host your translation as well. We are really open to continue the conversation. If you feel like joining from tomorrow, you will have the program online to keep on, moving the thoughts. As a cultural practitioner, I think, as all of you, we all need to find common ground by talking and understanding how we can move things forward. So thank you very much. I'll come with Francois to South Africa as soon as I can, I promise.
Good, excellent. As soon as we open our borders to you. Can everybody put their videos on who's willing to, and we can just take a quick happy snap to just record the moment. Thank you. Oh, look at that, isn't that nice? Smile for the picture.
Did I host Mr. Sibikwa?
In some cases, the host has switched us off.
This host, okay, the host has to re-switch everybody back on. I think
They can do it themselves.
Graham's one, Dimitri's one. Okay, let's take some more pictures. Is there somebody else taking pictures? Smile. Thank you, everybody. Go well.
So thank you, everyone. I just want to thank all the speakers before we say goodbye. So just to thank the speakers, Carla as facilitator, also Jordi, no longer with us, but great input. Francois, Avril, Stella, Phyllis, Ntobeli, Annabelle, Stephanie, Ariel. And then thank you everyone for participating and for the questions that raised. So I'm very happy for that. A recording has been made and it will be available probably on the Creative City South Facebook page. So please go and have a look at it if you need to refresh your memory about everything. And then again, thank you again to Avril and to Carla for their great facilitation. Wouldn't be possible without them. So I wish you all very well and go well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Zaid. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Carla. Lovely to see you and
Thank
meet you.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
We have to do the wave. Bye.
Thank you, Zaid.
Thank you. I'm just trying to save the file.
No, I think I need to finish the session if I'm not wrong, and then you can.
No, I was trying to save the other.
The
file.
chat.
Maybe you have to do that.
I saved the chat.
Oh, you have. Great, brilliant.
I'm gonna send it to you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ariel. Thank you, Carla. Go well.
Bye bye, Ariel.
Bye. Bye.
Grazie a te.